solve for the x and y axes to find a coordinate pair. X equals tau divided by pi. What the hell is tau? I have never heard of that in my life. Okay, so it's a constant 6.2. Alright, well, divide that by pi. That just gets you 2. Then the derivative of 4x plus 69,420 minus 2 pi. That's just 4. What kind of question is that? Why would you put a question like that in a ROM hack? Is it to mock me? Is it to make me feel like a clown? Mario and the Dreamscape is another one of those nice old-school Royale with cheese style ROM hacks that came out this year. A lot of these kinds of hacks fly under the radar these days because they don't have 3 billion entirely brand new custom objects and enemies or a shotgun. Honor this, you motherfucker. Those are the kinds of things that make headlines now, but hey, remember Eureka? Remember Decades Later? Neither of those had much of that kind of stuff either, but they were every bit as fun. Hacks like this will always be relevant for demonstrating that the base Mario 64 is still an excellent foundation on which to build a game, whether you add a bunch of highly customized stuff to it or not. If you have not already played Mario in the Dreamscape, you should definitely put a pin in it, because it's always great to dig into another Royale with cheese style hack. And with 145 stars to find, it's on the heavier side of that scale. So I hope you're hungry. Although the game doesn't have 3 billion new gameplay features, it is definitely a high-effort hack for different reasons, and a big one is definitely the story. It's a little tricky to follow, but essentially Bowser is plotting an attack on the Mushroom Kingdom, which seems like a pretty ordinary premise for a Mario game, except somehow part of that plan involves a land called the Dreamscape, which is the physical manifestation of dreams that real people have dreamt before. By the end, you are hearing about angels and demons and gods and literal eyes in the sky watching over everything. Heaven itself is in the game, except Bowser messed it all up, but one of the guys who lives there says, "If you can ignore all the bad things, then I guarantee you'll have a relaxing stay." I actually love this quote a lot, because really, you could say that about anything. If you ignore all the bad parts, it's pretty good. That's how I recommend Mario Sunshine to people. It has some simple but mesmerizing quotes here and there, while at the same time having a Bob-omb buddy that says something like, "What, you think there'd be a star up here? You ain't getting shit, boy." It even contains some surprising twists that I'm not gonna spoil for you, but pay attention to the dialogue while you play, because it's got some good stuff going on. You don't usually play this kind of game for the story, so it's one of those above and beyond type things that you don't take for granted. And would you believe that this game actually has multiple different endings? Yeah, really. Some of them are pretty heavy too, which is not something I associate with Mario games. It's one of those things that makes ROM hacks so special, you know. It's very rare that you'll see an official Mario game go to such dark places. If I understand correctly, all the worlds in the game are, by some definition, the manifestation of some dream world, which makes a lot of sense. As you go forth, the levels and imagery become more bizarre and illogical, one of my favorites being this one where you have 2 versions of the same level, and to travel between them, you have to launch yourself off the cliff. Don't see that every day. Check this out, they use the blue coins as markers for invisible platforms. Now that's a really cool thing. It's a very clever use of a basic Mario 64 object. It's always nice when these games are able to surprise you, even without the use of deep level custom coding. You have the mansion with the 2 mirrors creating 3 separate versions of the room you're in, and some very interesting artistic sensibilities. One level is so strange that it could be mistaken for a beta test level that was left over from the original game's development files. My favorite part is when you jump through this hole in the wall to find 2 palm trees and a literal skybox that's so small that it's just a regular box that looks like a sky. I especially love the Bowser fights in the game because they don't take place on the generic Bowser arenas. This one, for instance, takes place on a pirate ship. Sometimes it's just nice to see something different. In terms of difficulty, Mario in the Dreamscape is a little tricky to categorize. It's harder than the average ROM hack, but at the same time, it's probably one of the easiest harder ROM hacks I played in some time, if that makes any sense. A lot of Mario 64 mods struggle to find the balance when it comes to difficulty. The line between engaging and infuriating can be very thin from time to time. This is a game that is more difficult than the average ROM hack, but it's rare that it crosses the fuck you idiot threshold. There are some crappy moments here and there, like pretty much anything that involves a slide is a total ass twister. I had one moment where I clipped through the floor and ended up behind a grate that I was supposed to have the invisibility cap for, but I didn't, so I was permanently stuck until I exited the level. But it was kinda funny though. There's a real shit-ass part where you have to fly between these satanic blocks and the wing cap barely lasts long enough to make it. I hated that. There are moments where it wants you to be like a super professional player, which for me are always the weaker moments in Mario 64 hacks. I play these games for the freedom and the open-ended design. So any moment that requires me to be the top bitch and do these Shaolin monk type moves don't really do it for me. But like this guy said, if you ignore all the hard parts of the game, it's actually pretty easy. One thing I really like is that sometimes when the cannon is involved, the game actually shows you where to point the crosshairs such that you actually go where you're supposed to. It's a little thing, but I never got used to using that shit-ass cannon for as long as I've been playing Mario 64, so it feels like a big thing when it actually applies. Visually, you know, the game does a lot of cool things from time to time without being supremely technically ambitious. Levels have distinct color palettes and no two of them look alike to each other, but the true strength of this game is in the music. In these ROM hacks, a lot of the remix tunes tend to repeat themselves, and this one is no exception. But I've also heard a lot of remixes that I haven't heard elsewhere that deserve a lot of attention. In other words, this album is a banger. Mario in the Dreamscape is, as the name suggests, it's bizarre and it's dreamy. It goes to strange places, worlds that may otherwise only exist inside of dreams. It's a fun yet challenging ROM hack that keeps you on your toes and entertains you all the way. Whether through the music or the colorful dialogue, it's just a good one to play. And that's gonna be a wrap for today, but come back tomorrow because we'll be revisiting a game that I've spoken about before. Multiple times, I think at least 3. For one reason or another, I just can't stay away from this one. And I would say this is the final time I revisit it, but I said that the last time, so I'm not even gonna attempt to predict that. In any case, stay tuned, and Merry Christmas, cousins!